Well, good morning, and thank you all so much for joining us today. Welcome to our Bloomington Chamber Town Talk program. My name is Brent Pavia. I'm the president of the Bloomington Chamber, which is an affiliate of the Minneapolis Regional Chamber. We're pleased to be here in person at the council chambers at the city of Bloomington. Thank you very much to Bloomington for hosting and for city staff for making this possible. Really appreciate it. And we're also live streaming this event, and so we welcome all of you online as well. I want to take a moment before we get started to thank our sponsors. We appreciate their support. Our presenting sponsors, CenterPoint Energy, Mall of America, My Credit Union, Wells Fargo Bank, and Excel Energy. A little round of applause for sponsors because they make these things happen. Thank you. I am so looking forward to this discussion today with two leaders in this area that we're just so fortunate to have. Bonnie Carlson, President and CEO of the Bloomington Convention and Visitors Bureau, and Brian Ricks, Executive Director and CEO of the Metropolitan Airports Commission. We're going to start out with them giving a presentation overview, and then I'll ask some questions, have a little discussion, and then we'll open it up for questions from the audience here in person. We're going to start out with Bonnie, and Bonnie, I'm going to ask you as you decide whether you're going to present from the dais or get up and move around. I see that next to your name are the initials CDME, and I'm always curious about what that means. I'm going to guess, and you're going to tell me how wrong I am. I'm going to think that is Convention and Destination Management Executive. How close am I?
Close.
Oh, okay.
Certified.
Certified. All right. Well, thank you for being here, and take it away, Bonnie.
Great. I think I will walk. Brian and I decided we needed some exercise to get closer to all of you and to our audience. Good morning, everybody. I think Grant has fixed this up here. Grant, is it on? Hello? I got it, I think. Hello? Can you hear me? I got it. There. Sorry. I thought it was pushed down. Good morning, everyone. Well, it's really nice to be here in person, and good morning to our online group as well. Wish you were here with us, but eventually we'll all get back to normal or the new normal, as we've been calling it. I thought I'd start out with telling you a little bit about who we are, if you don't know. We are the official marketing organization for Bloomington. The hospitality industry is the largest industry in Bloomington, and our job is to inspire travelers to stay in Bloomington. That's what we want them to do, particularly when they come into Minnesota or anywhere in the metro area. How we do that, we target travel decision makers. That is at a variety of positions. It could be from a parent, a child, a group planner, individual business travelers, you name it. However they're deciding their travel. We work nationally, internationally, and of course in our region as well. We provide services to groups and leisure people when they need them. That could be visitor guides, services of any kind. And we work with our city officials in the industry for the future development of the destination. You know, keep it healthy and whatnot. So the pandemic hit the travel industry very, very hard. One of the hardest hit industries in the United States and internationally, in the world, I would say. U.S. Travel Association reports nearly $680 billion lost in travel spending, along with the tax revenue that is generated through taxing of any kind on products for travel. So that was really a huge impact nationally. In Minnesota, at the last number that was calculated by our Explore Minnesota Tourism Office, it was $8.6 billion in 2020, but it's more than that, we believe. And the hospitality employment is down 27%, and not still back, and I'll talk about that. big concern for all of us. International travel, 80%, they're estimating, was down. We have a great airport and great airlift, and you'll hear about that, and this has taken a big hit as well. In Bloomington, our hospitality industry, we just did it from a tax generation. There is a lodging tax and a food and beverage tax and so forth, and even a state tax. Our organization is funded off of a percentage of the lodging tax which the customer pays. So when there are no customers, of course, the funding actually takes quite a dive. We're calculating about $30 million in taxes for sure generated to the city of Bloomington and a portion of it to us. And the lowest occupancy at one point in April was 13%, which is unheard of. I've been doing this a long time, pretty low. This is sort of a picture of how that looked. You can just see the devastation that happened. When you look, the blue line is 19. Of course, the orange line, you can see that big dip into 20 in April. And now you'll see some of the recovery as we're happy that green line's getting a little bit closer to the blue line. So what happened in our organization? Well, on the left side, we were getting ready to do our largest event. It's a signature event that we do every year. We were going to celebrate the 24th year. It honors frontline service personnel. It's a huge event. It's their Academy Awards, if you will. And on March 12th, it was supposed to be March 15th. We canceled it on the 12th. It got scarier when, on the 17th, our wonderful Mall of America closed. That was pretty scary. It forced us to do some staff furloughs and reductions immediately by the end of that month. Travel halted as anybody knew it or couldn't believe it. I mean, it was absolutely, the occupancy started to plummet pretty quickly. Of course, the lodging tax that the customer pays declined, and we stopped all of our marketing. We paused everything and had to kind of look, okay, now what? On the right side, we pivoted to a strategy of wait, ready, set, go. The only problem with that was we kept getting pushed back to the wait mark as we went through the next few months. You know, how did you deal with all of that? We implemented a weekly, it's called an STR report. That's the acronym for Smith Travel Research. They are the respected company that tracks occupancy nationwide. We do have them on a monthly basis, but we immediately shifted and said we need some help weekly. We wanted to share that with our hotels and our industry, along with any research and insights that we were constantly monitoring. You can, as you all remember, it was quite confusing. We then started to look at what do we do with developing some seasonal campaigns and so forth. So this was a huge pivot for us. In addition to the pandemic, of course, we had what happened in downtown Minneapolis with George Floyd and the social unrest. And you know, how did that affect as we begin to think about the future and the destination, both of Minnesota on the world stage, of course, Minneapolis, and we were very concerned about that. So this last summer, as we began to really think about the way things are changing and what we want to do, we decided to and embark on a brand sentiment study. We have an agency, MMGY Global Agency, that works with us, and they have a really respected research area. And we wanted to find out some questions as to, you know, was there fear as far as traveling? Did any reputation in Minnesota get affected? And also what kinds of things maybe we took the opportunity would they like to see in the future? Well, we were pleasantly surprised. The sample size went to both past visitors and prospective visitors. We thought, if you're doing a research project, let's try to find out some interesting things going forward. If you've probably seen grids like this before, certainly the larger words were more popular or more frequently said. We loved that it was safe, family-oriented, fun, entertaining. We were really pleased about this part. On the prospective visitor, they thought we would be welcoming, affordable, so on, family-oriented, and entertaining. We were happy to see those. We took it a step further, as I mentioned, and we always like to know what they like to do. Part of destination development, what do they come to do? What keeps them happy and coming back? As you can see, the shopping area actually really excelled, both in the past and the future perspective. And as they went through some of the other areas, there was a big gap. But as you can see, some of the things on the left are actually part of our Mall of America. And so it always depends on how the questions are asked. Prospective visitors, the biggest difference was they weren't quite sure of our location, and how that related to where the mall was and or other attractions. Been here, you kind of know it. Here were some key takeaways that we thought that generally it was safe, a good place to visit, fun, and again, the familiarity of what they needed to, as far as the location, but all of them thought that it was a very relaxing destination. Excuse me. This gave us a lot of hope for the future, and we're still working on how we're going to answer some of those. So let's look at the numbers. Again, Smith Travel Research, our forecast. To set the stage, in 19, we ended 72.4%. That's a good average for a year of occupancy. Bloomington usually produces above the national average. That was good. You can see the drop to 2020 at 33.5%. This year it's projected to end at about 47.3%. A lot of us never thought we'd get excited about 47%, but it has been a welcome path to see some improvement. Right now, conservatively, Smith Travel Research are forecasting about a 58% occupancy. Now, that could go up, we're hoping. There's a lot of unknowns, as we all know. The order of recovery that they are suggesting would be leisure first, which we have already seen. The leisure market, the pent-up demand for everybody wanting to get out was clearly carrying the hospitality industry and nationally, both locally and nationally. They're suggesting business will be next and group will be last. It's anticipated, predicted, there's still going to be some ups and downs, particularly a little soft going into the beginning of the year, but there is optimism about going into 2022. At the CVB, certainly as the recovery starts, we're seeing some stabilized budgets and the signs of recovery. I mentioned the workforce. This is a huge problem nationally. You've heard about it on the news. If any of you travel, if any of you are out and about, it's a huge problem for our hotels. Finding workers, where are they? It's going to remain a concern for a while. At our organization, we embarked on a new strategic plan and vision and purpose. There is opportunities that come out of crisis. We want to be prepared to be able to answer those. As time goes on, we're in the process of that. And in our program of work, we're trying to accommodate the new normal. We found that we have a wonderful digital presence and platform, very strong. We've been building that for years, and we're going to continue on enhancing that, focus on that. In the short term, we'll be in the leisure market. The meeting and group area is changed dramatically, and we're going to figure out how we want to treat that going forward. Of course, our Mall of America partnership, new development, which I'll talk about. And we started a new organization in the middle of the pandemic. It's called Minnesota Sports and Events. This market, as you might remember, we've had some wonderful opportunities with sporting events. And while Minneapolis and St. Paul and Bloomington always had an informal partnership, we found that it would be advantageous to create it in a more unified manner. And we set up this organization. And we do have a president and CEO that runs it. We all participate in it, and I'm going to talk about some of the exciting things that are happening. The other thing we found very valuable to our hotels, and as we look to the future, is really investing in research and data. But more importantly, how do we read that data? We can target market pretty good, and so the insights, that's a different position. So we're looking at doing that. And of course, our marketing plan and budget for 2022. So let's talk about future opportunities and some of the projects and the coming to Bloomington. It's actually pretty exciting. You've all heard about the water park, Mall of America. We are in big support of this project. We were when it was going to be built the first time before the pandemic. It is truly, the numbers are off the charts. And with the mall is a big asset to Minnesota, to the region, and most importantly to Bloomington. There's another picture of it. We think this will be a nice addition to our hospitality industry, rounding it off and draw a lot of people. The land where it's positioned is great, and so we're very excited about this. Expo 2027, I don't know if you've heard about this, and if you don't know what the expo is, think the World's Fair. You're starting to hear a lot about this. We were involved in bidding for 2023, the United States, and we weren't successful. We progressed very nicely to get to that point, but now we're back in for Expo 2027. And what this means is this is bid by countries. So the United States is bidding. But the exciting news is that Minnesota is the site if we get it. Excuse me. Our theme is healthy people, healthy planet, wellness and well-being for all. If you can imagine, even back when we bid it before, this theme was probably one of the most popular, and it even is more relevant in today's environment. Bloomington has been identified as a potential site, and probably, I would say, the favorite pick. And this could be very beneficial. Certainly, there would be some permanent development. You know that if you've heard about World Expos in the past, the Eiffel Tower, the Neil, some iconic thing that would be left behind. Branding, the authenticity in the South Loop area. This is the proposed site. Naturally, the revenues would be huge, and the financial support and the legacy. So we're very excited about this. If the United States gets the bid, Minnesota is the state. So in other words, we will not be competing with another state. So we're hopeful, and we have a really good shot at it. The other thing that's going on, I talked about Minnesota sports and events. We currently have 35 citywide bids out, and some are going to be decision. The ones on the bottom are already final. So we start the year off with the Winter Classic. And while a lot of the hotel rooms could be in, like that one's probably more in St. Paul, the compression of that will be beneficial to Bloomington. The women's Final Four is April 3rd through the 6th. It's also the 50th year of Title IX. And Bloomington will be doing some celebrations at Mall of America. And of course, the Ryder Cup, we had the Ryder Cup in 2016. Bloomington plays a big part in this. We hosted both the international and the U.S. teams and a lot of the media. And it's at Hazeltine, and it is booked. It was supposed to be 28, but again, because of the pandemic, everything was pushed into a year. The other ones, excuse me, I have allergies, so I apologize. We have a lot of this Big Ten football and basketball. The exciting thing about this, what we're currently in, if you look down at the 2023 girls 11 to 13 USA volleyball, we have a verbal commitment. Now we're doing all the hotel work, as do we with the boys. This is a really, really good piece of business, and so we're very excited about it. And we are a finalist in the swim trials, and then recently we are one of 15 cities for the Rugby World Cup. So we're hopeful that a lot of these turn to definites. And lastly, I mentioned our Diamond Service Awards. We hope to start that up again this year. We're just going to pretend the other 2 years didn't happen, because this would be the 24th of it. It's a signature event, again, frontline service personnel, which are so important to our city and our hotel industry. So, and that's it. Thank you.
Thank you, Bonnie. And Brent, thank you for the invite to be here today. It's great to be with you all. Okay, there we go. Now we're back on board here. So I'm Brian Ricks, Executive Director and CEO of the Metropolitan Airports Commission. I've been in the industry now, I think 36, going on 37 years. And I thought, Bonnie talked a little bit about the impact to the hospitality industry, and certainly the airport and airline industry has been hit just as hard and significantly the most challenging times we've ever experienced in the history for our organization. I thought 9/11 was going to be the big speed bump in my career, but could not have envisioned how much deeper that this impact has been. When you look at U.S. airports, about a $40 billion loss from March of 2020 to 2022. Bringing that closer to the MAC, we've lost about $220 million in 2020 and are projecting about $93 million loss this year. So you add that up, about $313 million. And to put it in perspective, we typically generate about 400 and, I think our forecast in 2019 or going into 2020 was about a $406 million in revenue. And also to put that in perspective, we don't acquire taxpayer revenue to support our operation. The Airports Commission is run like a business, so it's all based on user fees and revenue that we generate, and then offset that with the expenses, and we pay, for the most part, the majority of our capital expenditures as well come out of the revenue that's generated at the facility. We do receive some federal grants, which is important on key projects, but big impact. The good news when you look at this is that our industry got in early with their hand out trying to get some federal relief because of how what we saw as the impacts that were coming. Both airports and airlines got into the first round. In fact, there were 3 rounds of CARES relief funding. And we received, of that funding, about $276 million back to help us out, which was key. But it's not only us as an airport, it's many concessionaires, stakeholders that needed help as well. And in fact, of those 3 CARE relief acts, the $276 million in total, we gave about $76 million of that back to airlines. I think it was about $41 million back to airlines. I think there was 35 or 36 million back to our concessionaires that operate at the airport to help them get through this. And the reason for that is we're all in it together, right? And we need them to be successful. They need us. So that gives you a little bit of a sense of the financial picture that we've been hit with. Coming off of 2019, into 2020. 2020 is the line at the top where you see a 6.3 and an 8.7% increase in passengers. We were coming off 10 years of solid growth, and 2019 of an all-time record year of close to 40 million passengers. And going into January and February, that seemed to be continuing toward another record year. And then the bottom just dropped out, and you can see what happened in March. In April would have never envisioned we would get down to only 5% of our passenger volume. 70,000 total passengers in April of 2020 versus almost 1.5 million, over 1.5 million in 2019. That number, slowly trended up. In 2020, we ended up being about 38% of 2019 volumes. And then you can see in 2021, this year, we started out at about 40% down. Those numbers that you see, those negative numbers on that graph, are down from 2019. So it's been trending up over the last 7 months, or through, I should say, about July, and then we flattened out as a result of the Delta variant, and came up a little bit in September. We had a pretty good October with MEA, and so I think we'll see a little bit of a jump there, but that gives you a sense. I'm going to just ask, who has traveled in the last 6 months? If you could raise your hands. Okay, so probably the majority of people. Of that, was it leisure? How many traveled for leisure? Okay. How about business? All right, that's a good sign. I mean, in this room, and we're starting to see more and more of that come back. We thought Labor Day was going to be the big, turning point, but then with the variant, that certainly slowed things down. This gives you a sense of our active routes on the left side, and then the number of daily departures, scheduled daily departures on the right. Active routes coming into the pandemic, we were up, 223. That dropped to a low of 91 in that, April, May of 2020 timeframe, and it has slowly come back to 178. The bottom line is the suspended routes, 31. So of that 178, 168 are domestic routes, 10 are international. Typically we have 30 to 35 international routes, depending upon the season. And that's obviously the one that is slow to recover. And then again on the right, operations. Operations weren't impacted as significantly. And that's because you remember Delta continued to, in 2020, they continued to fly a lot of routes, but they didn't fill the middle seats, which was really nice for a passenger if you flew during that time. Having come just back from Atlanta last week with a packed plane, I remembered back to those days when that middle seat was not occupied. But anyhow, that gives you a little sense of the operations. We have had some good news, though. 27 new domestic routes in 2021. We're back to about 90% of our domestic routes recovered. So again, domestically, travel, I think, picked up rather quickly, and I think a little bit ahead of original projections. We welcomed our newest airline during this time, and what we've seen is the ultra low-cost carrier group has been quicker to add capacity, and we were the beneficiary of Allegiant Airlines, which is an ultra low-cost carrier, adding service year-round to Asheville and 3 Florida destinations. Now, Sun Country, with their transformation, responded rather quickly to that announcement and added the same communities to their route structure as well. And I want to comment a little bit on Sun Country. Sun Country is doing a fantastic job. They are really growing here. And they started off, if you recall, I think it's been 4 years now, with new leadership. Jude Bricker is the CEO. Jude actually came from Allegiant Airlines, the folks that came in here recently. But Jude has put together, and they had some speed bumps to start, but he has really put together a program and a product that is taking off. And in fact, they've announced there's 7 new routes starting in April and June of next year. That is good for our region, for our state, for the whole 5-state region. And it's excellent that we have a ultra low cost carrier that is stable, that is making money. Sun Country was the only airline to make money last year. They've got a product that doesn't fit everyone, but if you want to go somewhere at a very low fare, they focus on the leisure traveler. It's a great it's a great opportunity for you. So to have an ultra low cost carrier that is hubbed here, that is experiencing tremendous growth, and a premier, I think the best network carrier in Delta Airlines that offers premier service, both domestic and international, is really a good place to be as an airport, and we're one of few that can say that. As far as international routes, we're about 66% recovered in 2021. This shows the winter international service, obviously, with everyone wanting to go south in the winter, that expands. And so we've got some nice routes, and Sun Country has been adding additional routes as well. A little bit on concessions. We were down to only 25% of our food and beverage and retail operations being open at the airport. That is currently about 80%, but what I'll tell you is that it's a little deceiving because they're not open full-time. Most of those are not open full-time. One of our biggest challenges, and you probably know what I'm going to say, is workforce. We are down. When you look at the entire airport environment with airlines, concessionaires, rental car companies, down about 700 employees from where we need to be. Concessions are about 300 to 400 of those. So we are working hard to try to get people back to work. And so that's been a struggle, and I think will continue to be a struggle for us. A little bit about testing and vaccines. We partnered with the state early on to offer a testing site at MSP that is still going strong. There's been, I think close to 300,000 tests administered at that site. We entered into a partnership with Wonder Test rapid testing site. That was key for us to open up international travel to Amsterdam when Delta brought that back. We've opened up vaccination sites in both Terminal 1 and Terminal 2. And what we're trying to work through right now is the federal vaccine mandate and the requirement that we have passed, I should say. The MAC has passed a vaccine mandate with an exemption. The exception is that you can test, and so we are working through that right now. We passed that a couple weeks, but the federal vaccine mandate could impact our workforce, and we're very concerned about that. And so, as an airport, we are certified annually by the Federal Aviation Administration to maintain certain things. Conditions of the airfield, we're certified. We have to maintain certain levels of staffing. Our aircraft rescue and firefighting department has to meet requirements for response times. We have law enforcement requirements from a staffing standpoint. So we are very concerned that if and when we're pulled into that, how that would impact our staffing. So we're working through that right now. A little bit, what has COVID pushed, I think, a little quicker is biometrics and facial recognition. We implemented a biometric exit process for international flights. That was actually implemented in 2019 at the Delta gates, international gates. Over the last year, we've implemented simplified arrival. So it's a biometric process when you come in from an international flight. So you don't have to pull documents and present them and punch information into those kiosks. I was just down in Atlanta last week, and Delta showed us it's called their Express Check, bag check. It's a biometric bag check process if you're enrolled in pre-check or global entry. That's something they're interested in installing here. Really replaces the fingerprints, physical IDs, and boarding passes. TSA has also implemented a process where you don't have to hand them your document. It's just based on your driver's license or your passport, which has certainly improved efficiency. I want to move a little bit into some of the improvements. If there's a silver lining to COVID, it was that it did allow us to push some projects forward a little bit quicker during a time when there wasn't a lot of activity. Going into COVID, my biggest concern was the MnDOT Highway 5 reconstruction project and what that was going to do to people trying to get to the airport. Turns out that project was perfectly timed with COVID, but also gave us an opportunity to completely reconstruct our inbound and outbound roadways. The inbound roadway is complete. The outbound roadway is being completed right now. So good projects to get done. We've continued to move forward at a rapid pace, what we call our Operational Improvements Program. It's a complete remodeling and expansion of our ticketing, baggage, and vertical circulation elements. If you've been out there recently, it's really been transformational. It's added more space. Baggage carousels are much larger. We raised the ceiling in that baggage area. It's added new lighting. It's really a nice feel in those areas currently. The other thing we're currently working on is an expansion of G Concourse. As if you've flown out of G, Delta has a lot of large aircraft down there. There's not enough seating space. The restrooms are old on that concourse. So at the end of G, I think it's gates 17 to 22, we've expanded it. And we've built a central corridor, and we're building a shell. That top piece on the right is a new Delta Sky Club. That'll be the third Delta Sky Club at the airport. It's going to be in a great location, and we'll be done with the shell of that pretty soon, and then Delta will come in and build out the Sky Club, and I believe that'll open actually at the end of next year or early 23. That gives you a little sense of what we're doing. This is a picture of our most recent art project called the Aurora, which is a wonderful array that comes up through the baggage, up through the ticketing area, and has lakes on the floor that are interactive. If you walk in the lakes, it changes colors of the Aurora. So we're really proud of the art program that the Airport Foundation has implemented, and I think it's the best in the country. So with that, Brent, I'll turn it back to you, and happy to respond to any questions. Thank you.
Thanks, Brian. Nice presentations from both of you. Really appreciate that. As Brian makes his way back to the dais, wanted to follow up, Bonnie, with you on workforce. I mean, we had some great employment numbers today, jobs up, unemployment down. In good times, there's challenges in your world around workforce, in both of your worlds. But in particular, I'm thinking about, most of the employees that are, they can't work virtually. They have to show up. And so what is happening in terms of that currently and what you're forecasting down the road?
Well, it is a continued problem, and you're right. It did start, it's always a challenge back in 2019, but nothing like today. I did hear the same thing on the radio this morning as I came in, and it was that the hospitality segment has grown, one of the most that has grown with this adding jobs. But one of my hotels is here, Jim Walvogel with the Hilton. But what I'm hearing, the people have transitioned during COVID into other fields. And I think we say, where are all the people? I mean, what have they transitioned into? Because, and it's nationwide. Everywhere. And our hotels and industry are paying good wages and benefits, and so it really is interesting. I think they are dealing with still childcare, maybe that's it, a lot to do with it. If the children are home, they're not back in school, so the whole vaccine process. But it's really a challenge. So that's that. I think prior to the pandemic, we were always looking at developing more interest in our industry. A lot of people would think that our industry is more transitional versus a career. And we were, I know myself, I was out speaking in schools, colleges, and so forth. You can have a wonderful career in this industry in key positions and so forth. So trying to, erase that perception. It isn't simply transitional, always existed. But yeah, it's a real challenge. Job banks, I was talking to one vendor, nobody showed up. So, I mean, I don't know.
Yeah.
It's a problem.
Well, and it is true. I think that the aspect, even before the pandemic, I don't know that the hospitality industry did as good a job talking about how great a career path it was. I talked to a lot of hotel management, and they talked about that transformation over the past few decades. So it really changed. Brian, how much does Delta Airlines hate the fact that the variant is called Delta? I mean, how confusing. When you were just talking there, I thought, oh my gosh, I know they're a big employer. I know that they're really influential. They couldn't influence that?
They call it the variant.
The variant? Okay.
We were down at Delta headquarters last week, and that's how it was referred to. So, yeah, it's interesting.
Yeah, it is. So I wanted to follow up a little bit with you on the construction pieces. I mean, it was a year and a half ago that we had our last in-person Bloomington Town Talk, and we talked about construction around the airport and how, difficult that was going to be. Well, it turned out to be not as difficult as we thought, but it continues, and I'm super impressed with what you've done. And I'm going to get the name wrong, but the whole parking, transit, concourse, all that is transformative. It's really wonderful. What are some of the next deadlines in terms of completion for some of the things? I notice, I've been at the airport a fair amount of times, and I'm like, okay, well, this little area in front of, departures or arrivals, there's still something going on there. What are we looking at?
Well, yeah, a lot. I mean, we typically do anywhere from 200 to, we've been pushing 500 million annually in construction projects. The Silver Ramp was completed during COVID because we went into COVID thinking or knowing we needed additional parking, and we added about 5,000 parking spaces, a intermodal transit center, moved the rental cars over there. It's a great facility. We just need parkers in there now to help pay for it, right? And that'll come, but we're well positioned, I think, in the future. I talked a little bit about the operational improvements program that will be completely finished in 2024. At least that's the hope right now. The good thing about that project is it has added a space that will suit us very well. And when social distancing was a big deal, that was instrumental because it added 15 feet to the front of the entire length of the terminal, both on the upper and lower level. And we needed that as people were in security check lines. Some of the other projects, the downside about making some really nice improvements in the upfront areas of the house there is that some of the other areas start to not look quite as good. And Delta, one of the reasons we were down at Delta headquarters last week was to talk about improving Concourse G. They want to partner with additional improvements in Concourse F as well, and so we need to figure out how to do that. The challenge we have from capital investment right now is we due to the financial situation, we were forced to push back about $300 million in scheduled capital improvements over the last 2 years. And so it's a matter of catching up with that and then moving forward with additional requests that are coming. I commented on Sun Country and the growth that they're experiencing. They need some additional gates as well. So you talked about employment, so that's a challenge, and the other biggest challenge I think we have is how do we continue to move forward and invest in the capital projects that we need to keep things going, and we're going to have to be thinking outside the box to do that.
Sure. I remember a couple of years ago you'd mentioned that you had almost all the airlines, maybe one or two that didn't go through MSP. What's the status of just airlines in general, and you being able to accommodate them at MSP?
And that's the key. You want to have enough built-in capacity so that you're not turning anyone back. And in fact, Allegiant was a little bit of a challenge. The reason we could accommodate them is because at Terminal 2 there were some times during the day that we had gates available. As you can imagine, when airlines typically want gates, it's early morning for the early morning push. It's midday when the banks come back, and there's other, Delta has more banks than that, and it's late at night because when they can get people back and then prepare for the early morning push again. But the fortunate thing about Allegiant is they operate a little differently, where they start at a base, either Las Vegas or Phoenix or other bases that they have. They go to the location, then they turn and go back and bring their people back. So it allowed us to accommodate them. But we want to stay ahead of the game. We always want to have a gate or two available for a new entrant opportunity. We're doing, I think, extremely well on the domestic carriers. We're continuing to work hard on bringing in additional international opportunities. Aer Lingus was one a few years ago, and we lost them over COVID. We hope to get them back, but there's other international carriers that are certainly interested, and we need to have the capability to accommodate them. So that'll be a challenge.
Great. I'm going to open it up to questions, and so Megan, if you can come up and grab the handheld to help with the audience questions. As we do that, Bonnie, pre-pandemic, I kind of described the hotel scene in Bloomington as a little bit of an arms race in terms of improving amenities, new facilities coming online. What is the status of construction and remodeling? And are there still organizations that are investing in new properties? Has that been pulled back? Renovation of existing properties? What's the status on that?
So, yes, it seemed we had a lot of hotels that were coming on board. Some of them completed. There's a couple that paused, but are still intending to complete their build-out. Drury Properties was one. So that happened. But I also think a lot of hotels, and I see this nationwide too as I've been traveling, took the opportunity to do some renovating while they didn't have the business once everything settled, which is interesting. We only lost, I think, one hotel closed, one hotel in Bloomington decided that part of their room inventory would be used for living spaces, more apartments and such. But so we think the future's bright. As always, as we talk about future development, we don't want to be just hotels. We want to balance that with great development to draw people to our destination, and so that's really important. Hence the new attractions that are going in at, say, Mall of Americas are really important, and keeping that balance is great. But I believe that it will come back, and some of the renovations I think are good. Spruce it up a little bit, and so yeah, I think paused is a good word.
Great. Do we have any audience questions? Or are you going to keep me running? Yeah, please. Hold us up. Let's get the mic to you, and then...
Check.
Yeah.
We've all seen on the television the air rage episodes. I'm assuming that hardly any of those ever originate at MSP in terms of too much alcohol consumption at the restaurants and such. Any plans to help monitor that situation and prevent those problems?
That's a great question, and obviously we've never seen it like this before, and it's happening across the board with all airlines, and that was a topic of our discussion with Delta last week as well. They're very concerned about it. They had a couple of employees, I believe it was in New York, that actually went to the hospital as a result of it. So we're working with Delta. It's interesting when we've surveyed our concessionaires just recently, they indicated that a lot of people are asking for glasses of ice, which means people are bringing alcohol in, and which is a phenomenon we haven't seen before. But so what are we doing? We're monitoring it very closely. We've actually worked with our concessionaires just in the last couple of weeks to suspend to-go alcohol. If you don't know, that's something that was added pre-COVID, opportunities for people to purchase alcohol at some of the concessionaires and bring it to their gate. We've suspended all of that, working with our concessionaires. They've been open to doing that. So that's one measure. I think the federal government obviously has taken measures to increase fines and the offenses, but it's a terrible situation when you think about it. What's been happening there.
Yeah, a little patience and grace goes a long ways, especially in these times. Do we have another one from the audience?
And this is probably more for Bonnie. What states are we seeing most of our visitors coming from, and what are we doing to market to those states to bring more visitors to the area?
Well, pre-pandemic, and we receive visits, and we do track this from all 50 states and, of course, internationally. Most recently, we're finding in the 5-state area, it's more regional, even as much as within Minnesota, outstate Minnesota. I always say there's, not everyone can afford to fly off and go, on a cruise or go to Disney. I mean, it's quite expensive. And so a lot of people close to us, Wisconsin, the Dakotas, Iowa, Chicago is a huge market. They vacation in our area and from outstate Minnesota. The other thing that we have a lot of is Canada. And of course, we're looking forward when the border's opening. We have a lot of Canadian visits and so forth. So what we have noticed is a little bit closer to home and more of the drive market and flying. We're getting a lot of that as well. So
Great. David?
So thank you very much for your presentations this morning, Bonnie and Brian. And I think it's a testament to your resiliency as an organization with, once in a 100-year pandemic. And, it felt like the bottom dropped out, but you kind of shouldered on and did improvements during this time and looked at everything. It kind of reminds me of a television commercial from many years ago about United Airlines, where a CEO delivered plane tickets to his employees and say, get out there in the business world and get the business travel back. It's hard to predict. And I've seen many predictions about the recovery period and everything else, but I especially appreciate hearing about the future events, the future, activities and draws to this area, particularly on the sports side. Promoting that enthusiasm for our market is a really important thing. So more of that, hearing more of that, and not so much about the negative side of COVID, I think would be really helpful in our community and to the business world in general. So thank you.
Go ahead. I just wanted to recognize, too, David Lair. David has worked very instrumental in our bid for the Expo, the World Expo. We worked together on the 2023. Couldn't do it without him. He's really taken the lead, and I'll let you talk to him afterward to tell you all about it. But you're so right in that. And even from our organization, it was pretty much doom and gloom, I think, for the world, and you all went through this as well. But it really is a wonderful time to look inward and to look, sort of renovating, to your point, and you asked that about your own organizations. And I think that is kind of the path to the new normal. Things have changed. It's like a reset. And from a crisis, emerge new opportunities. And I really think it's thoughtful of doing that. So thank you. We're going to be optimistic about the future. And so we're excited. The sports bids, I couldn't tell you, we have a small team that's doing it, and they are mighty. And the recognition of them is just, it's pretty amazing for the destination. So it'll come.
Well, I agree with you 100%. Very optimistic and bullish. I'm going to end on that. But before I do, so I'm going to ask two questions to each of you. The first one, I phrased it negatively in my head about what keeps you up at night. I hope nothing keeps you up at night. But what is the biggest thing that you're concerned about right now, happening right now or in the near future, that's your biggest concern?
I think it's just future setbacks at this point. I mean, we thought we were moving at a pretty good clip here, and then we had the variant, right, and that set us back. But I think that's the biggest concern, and then obviously the workforce challenges that we have. We need those businesses back open, and we need people to get back to work. We're working hard to do that through job fairs and through reaching out, partnering with our concessionaires. But we need people back to work so that we can deliver the services that our customers expect.
Yeah, amen. We're all in on that. Bonnie?
Well, I might have answered that a while back as everything would keep me up at night. But I would agree.
Your mic is muted. Bonnie, can you?
Oh, sorry.
Thank
I thought it was green. I think you heard me when I said everything would keep me up. But I would agree a setback in the pandemic. And I think I'm hoping we're beyond that. I'll take a step out with the vaccination and everything. Certainly the media, who we love, hopefully will pause before we start talking about all these things, because it was a dangerous thing. And now I'm optimistic about with everybody being vaccinated and so forth. So that is that. The other thing on my list is the really lack of future development, the stalling of that. Brian talks about it at the airport. We talk about it in our destination. And, a lot of that is as a result, but we are fortunate. We have some forward thinking here in the city of Bloomington, and we have a wonderful attraction. And so we're very optimistic about that, but we don't want to stop. I think you really fall behind. It's really, we just keep moving forward, as it's pretty exciting. So
yeah,
that would be my wish as well.
Well, and I think you both presented a lot of optimism and reasons for that based in data and reality in your presentations. But just on a positive ending note, what are you looking forward to in terms of the near future, the holiday season that's coming up, and beyond that, if there are some trends or things that you're really excited about?
Well, what we saw during MEA weekend was travel actually on one day exceeded 2019 MEA travel. So that's exciting. We're expecting to see that during the holidays as well. I think what excites me about the whole travel industry is that as we came into COVID, that got taken away in a big way for many people through travel restrictions from businesses or just the safety concern. And we know there's a pent-up demand, and we know when something gets taken away, I think it comes back in a big way, and I'm certainly expecting that over the next year. From an international standpoint, we need travel to become easy internationally, and I think we'll have everything back to Europe next year. The big question is the Asia-Pacific region, and we need to get that back. That's critical for our both business and leisure travel.
Great. Bonnie?
Yes, for us too, I would say the travel. It's just nice to see people again, and getting together, families reuniting and visiting other families. In addition to that, we're really excited to have the holidays back at our Mall of America. I mean, if you haven't been there, and I'm sure most people have, it's so wonderful to see all the festivities and events and so forth. And those were paused in the last couple of years. And I mean, the Festival of Trees is back, and they'll have some great opportunities. Now we just need all the merchandise to come in. There's been a pause, but it's coming, and there's such a variety of stores. So to the lady who asked the question, the drive market is huge. I mean, they love to come and have that festive event. We're seeing some of the holiday programs being started up again, and whether it's theater or music, and so that's nice. And they're doing it in a safe way, more importantly. And so we're very excited about all of that. It's just a wonderful time of the year.
Wonderful. Well, I can't thank you, Bonnie and Brian, enough for your time, information, and seeing your lovely faces in person. Let's give them a round of applause for being here this morning. Great work. Just a couple of notes on upcoming programming through the Chamber. You can get this on our website, mplschamber.com. We have an Issues and Insights Legislative Breakfast a week from today, next Friday, on redistricting in Minnesota. That's a completely in-person event at the Doubletree Park Place in St. Louis Park. Critical Issues Forum on how refugee talent can be an asset to the MSP business community. That's the following Friday, the 19th. And then the big kind of capstone event that we'll present hybrid this year is the Minnesota Keystone Luncheon that recognizes corporate charitable giving on December 9th. So again, thank you to all of our wonderful sponsors. Thank you for our audience, both in person and virtually. And enjoy your weekend. You get an extra hour of this beautiful weekend, so enjoy it. Thank you very much.